This is the first of a three-part workshop series that we're bringing to you, Introduction to Data Analysis for Aspiring Data Science. So this workshop is going to be an introduction to Python on Databricks. And we have two more workshops coming up. So the next one, part 2, is going to be next week on April 15th. And then the third part is machine learning on April 22nd. So visit the Data Plus AI online meetup page and RSVP for those events so you get the notifications. We'd love for all of you to join us, especially if you find this workshop useful. So just a quick few reminders. So we have a bunch of different kind of upcoming online meetups, interviews, workshops, tech talks, and we all launch them from the Data Plus AI online meetup group. So I'll drop these links in the chat, and I'll also include a follow-up message with these URLs. So make sure to join that group so you can check out what's upcoming. And then also, I know we have a bunch of folks that are joining us from YouTube Live, so thank you for that. And we always broadcast, or we set reminders. So make sure to subscribe on YouTube and turn your notifications on. So whenever we launch a new online offering, that syncs to YouTube. And so you can set a reminder for yourself to join us live there if you'd like to. And then also too, joining the Zoom broadcast allows you to participate in the chat function and then also ask questions in the Q&A. And I'll drop these links in the chat as well. And then I did just send out a message to everyone who RSVP'd. These are 2 links that will be useful for this session. Again, I'll drop them in the chat in a few minutes once I hand it over to Cheng Ying, but I just wanted to put these up here for a second if anybody wanted to try to grab them. So now I'd like to have all of our instructor, Cheng Ying, and all of our TAs just do a quick introduction, maybe just 30 seconds, wave and say hi. We have a bunch of TAs that are going to be answering Q&A questions. So that's where you're going to want to drop your questions, and they'll be helping throughout the presentation. So maybe Amir, if we can just start with you, if you wouldn't mind saying a quick hello.
Sure. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Amir Isai. I'm a senior data science consultant at Databricks. I work in the same team as Connor, Brooke, and Cheng Ying. So I spend my time about 40% training customers and 50–60% of the time implementing machine learning solutions. So I'm going to be the TA, as Karen mentioned. So if you have questions, just drop it on the chat, and me and Connor and Brooke try to help you understand the things you're asking or answering the questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Connor.
Hey folks, my name is Connor Murphy, and I also work with Amir, Brooke, Cheng Ying, and so we all work very, very closely together on consulting engagements for data science, and then some training as well. And so if you have any questions, feel free to ping us, and we're happy to answer them.
And my name is Brooke Wenig. I lead the machine learning practice team along with Cheng Ying, Amir, and Connor. And just as a side note, Connor will be teaching the next session on pandas, and Amir will be teaching the following session on machine learning. So I'm really excited that this is really a whole team effort to put together these series for you.
Thanks, everyone. Yeah, now I'll pass it to Cheng Ying, who is our instructor for today. So I'll stop sharing my screen and let you take it away.
Sounds good. Hi, everyone. My name is Cheng Ying. You can call me Cheng Ying. I think all my coworkers have introduced my responsibilities pretty well. I work with customers on consulting projects, helping them to implement data science solutions, and also deliver machine learning trainings. So we have a packed schedule here. I'm just going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Oh, sorry, that was the wrong screen. New share. And this one. Okay. So to get started with this workshop, you will need a Community Edition account to log into the Databricks platform. If you don't have an account yet, please go to this link, databricks.com/try-databricks. And you need to sign up to sign up for your account, and you will receive an email to verify your account. And that's when you can sign up for, that's when you can log into the Community Edition portal. So I'm gonna give all of you a few minutes over here to get set up. And if you don't mind telling me when you are done, if you can go ahead and go to the chat function and tell me you're done, then that's when I know that I can proceed to logging into the community edition. Cool, I'm just gonna give it a couple more minutes. Yeah. So you can also see on my screen here, there's a link, try-Databricks. Yep, we are using a community edition. So you will sign up for a community edition account. Okay, I think some of us have already completed the sign up session, the sign up process. Don't worry if you are lagging behind a little bit because the notebook will also be available later for you to work on it in your own time. So let's go ahead and log into the community edition. Click login. Okay, so if you are seeing this page, it means that you have successfully logged into the Databricks platform, which is a cloud-based big data platform. There is a bunch of icons here on the left-hand side, the sidebar over here. I'll be introducing to you some of them during the session. But first, let's go ahead and click on the cluster icon, which is this icon that looks like a graph or a tree. So during today's session, rather than using your computer's local computing resources, we will all be using the Databricks computing resources. And so to do that, we will need to create a cluster first. So let's go ahead and hit create cluster button. I will explain to you what a cluster means in a second and what this detail means here as well. But for now, let's put in our name to create a cluster. And you can hit create cluster. So if we go to the cluster page, when you have successfully set up the cluster, you should have a spinning icon that tells you that their state is pending because it's pending to set up. So if you click into this cluster, you can look at the configurations of this cluster. So what is a Databricks cluster? A Databricks cluster is a set of computation resources. The edition that we're using now is Community Edition, which means that it is free. It comes with 15 gig of memory, and it will also terminate automatically 2 hours after your last code command is executed. So this Community Edition allows you to access a small cluster to run your code in notebook environment. So the Community Edition is good for prototyping simple applications, but it's not meant for production. The Community Edition is also using Amazon Web Services, AWS, under the hood, so it will take a few minutes to spin up. So what it looks like on your page right now, it should still be spinning, a spinning green icon. You will see that there is a Databricks runtime version over here. And what this means is that the runtime version is backed by Apache Spark. And that's all you need to know for now. In this introductory class, we'll just be using regular Python. So we won't be getting into the nitty-gritty of using distributed computing using the Spark. So that is in the gist what cluster is. You are using computing resources on the cloud. So if you want to work together with your peers on your notebook, you can invite your peer to your workspace. And that's when the workspace icon comes in handy. So you can click on this icon, workspace icon, you can see that there is a shared and users. Under the users, it should be just your email because you're the only person in the workspace. And if you were to invite your friends to this workspace, you can click on this person icon on the top right-hand corner and click on admin console. That's when you can add a user to invite friends. So in this community edition, you can invite up to 2 users. So it means that in a workspace, you can have 3 user accounts altogether. So now I'm going to show you how to access the notebook that we're going to use during this session. Let's go to the GitHub page, which is this, github.com/Databricks/tech talk. If you are not familiar with what a GitHub is like a Google Drive. It keeps track of your code. It helps you to, it can host code for you. I will encourage you to follow along what I'm doing if you want to, run code cells when I conduct this session, but you can also choose to sit back and watch my demo after and play with the notebooks in your own time. So you can see that there is a bunch of folders here. All the future resources for the upcoming workshops will also be posted in this GitHub repo as well. For today's workshop, you will be interacting with this folder, Introduction to Python. So let's click into it. You see different files over here. There's a lab for you to do it in your own time. So during today's session, we'll just be using a Python fundamentals file. So let's click into it. And then let's grab this link, Command copy, Command C to copy this link. You will also notice that this file has an extension IPYNB. It means that it's a Jupyter notebook. You can also access this notebook in your local Jupyter environment as well. But I'm going to show you how you can import a regular Jupyter notebook into the Databricks environment. So now that you have this link, copy it and then go to this Databricks homepage again. And you can click on the home button right here in the sidebar. And you can see that your name is up here. And you can see there's an arrow for you to click on it. And you can see there's a drop-down menu. So you can choose to create a notebook, to create a new notebook or library or folder. But for today's purpose, because we already have a link to import, so let's go ahead and click import. And you can see that you can import either from file or from URL. So you can choose to download the file and upload it. But because we have a link, so I'm just going to use URL. And I'm going to paste it in here and then click import. So it should take you automatically to the notebook that you wanted to access. And beneath the title of this notebook, you will see there is a word here, detach. And if you hover over it, it says right now it's not attached to a cluster. You select the cluster to attach. And you will also notice that this icon looks familiar because it is the cluster icon that we just clicked into. So we're going to attach this notebook to a cluster by clicking on this dropdown and attach your cluster that you just set up to this notebook. So what it means by attaching a notebook to a cluster means you can execute all the code on this notebook on this particular cluster. So when you attach a notebook, it means that the notebook is using the resources of this cluster. So in this session, we'll be covering what numbers are, strings, variables, print statements, lists, for loops, functions, conditional statements, and checking different types. There's a good reference sheet for you to bookmark. I'm gonna click into to show you. Here's a Python cheat sheet that shows you different Python syntax. And there's another link to show you official tutorial if you want to learn more about Python after this. This is developed by the Python developers. You can follow along their lessons as well. You may also notice that this notebook has a combination of text and also code. And you might also wonder what a Markdown cell is. If I double click into this cell, you can see that this cell starts with %MD. MD stands for Markdown. So I can write my text and render it as text rather than code. So if I hit Shift Enter, it will compile the cell and show that it's a text. And if you also notice that I started the headings with different pound signs, like different number of pound signs. Here, the top header has only 1 pound sign, and then the second header has 2 pound signs. So the top level will be bigger. So that's how you can write a Markdown cell. You can also choose to run a cell by hovering over the top right-hand part of this cell. You can see that there is a delete button, minimize button, and also an edit menu to perform different operations on this notebook cell. So now let's go ahead and try to interact with Python on this Databricks notebook environment. So let's use this as a calculator. Just real simple. We're going to just type in 1 + 1. You can either press Shift Enter to run this cell, or you can also go to this top right corner over here to hit the run button to hit run cell, or you can just click on it and it knows that you would need to run the cell. So you can see here that 1 + 1, yay. So that was our first Python code in the Python environment. You can see that we already have an output, we know it's 2, so sanity check, that was correct. You can also interact with strings. For example, if I type in ice cream and wrap it in quotes, it doesn't matter if you use single quotes or double quotes, it will do the same thing. So I Shift Enter, you can see that it is outputting ice cream for me. I can also choose to concatenate strings together. So you can see that here's the first part of the string, here's the second part, and I'm going to concatenate them using the plus sign. So I'm going to hit Shift Enter again. You can see that it's now printing ice cream is paradise for me, but without the space. That's because it's not smart enough to figure out that we need a space in between. So if you do want a space, you need to press, you have to enter a space in there. So notice that with numbers, Python knows that you should add up numbers, but then with strings, it would think that you will want to concatenate the strings together. So now let's move on to variables. So a variable in Python really is just a named unit of data. You can assign your value, like this value, for example, to any name that you want. But of course, the more intuitive you name your variable, the more helpful it is for you when you want to look back at your own code. Like for example, if I want to run this line, I like ice cream with the pound sign in front. This means that this line of code is commented out. And to uncomment or comment a line of code, all you need to do is to press Command and / if you are in the Mac environment. So if I try to run this cell, it's going to give me an error. It says invalid syntax because Python is going to think that there is a variable that's named I like ice cream. And it's going to try to print I and like and ice and cream, for the variable value. But it's not going to work because we need to assign the value to a variable. And by assigning a value to a variable, all you need to do is to have an equal sign. And you can see that now I'm going to assign ice cream as the best food. So I'm going to use equal sign to assign the value. So if I run this cell again, Shift Enter, then you will see that the best food is now ice cream. So notice that I can also just update this best food variable whenever I want. Like for example, I can choose to update my best food to be pizza. And notice that here, I'm going to show you that I'm using double quotes, here single quotes, but they really work the same. So what best food would print is actually pizza because Python will remember that the latest variable, the value assignment is pizza rather than ice cream. So I'm going to run this. You can see that it's showing us pizza rather than ice cream. Okay, because I like ice cream better, so I'm just going to comment this out and run this cell again so that the best food is always going to be ice cream. So moving on, you can also choose to print statements. You may wonder, like, why do we even need to specify print? Because here I'm not using print and I can print things just fine. The utility of having the print statement is that it will force the Python to print out every statement that you want. Like for example, if I were to not have, this line over here, and if I were to print this, it would only print best food because this is the latest line. So for me to print both lines, I need to add print to the first line as well. So here, then you can see that it's explicitly forcing Python to print out both lines rather than the last one. You can also be more explicit about what you are printing. Like for example, if you want to remind yourself what best foot is and you don't want to keep typing 2 lines, you can also choose to wrap this variable within quotes. Still, you can see that the style that I'm using is F formatting. So all I need to do is add F in front of quotes and then wrap the variable that you want to print within the curly brackets. And then you can print this. So now it automatically knows that it should retrieve the best foot variable and it will print the statement correctly. Now let's take a look at lists. So I'm gonna try to make a list of what I think everybody would eat for breakfast this morning. So say that you went really fancy, you had pancakes, eggs, and waffles. I'm gonna run this as a list. So you can see here that again, I'm using a concept of strings over here. And I'm going to wrap them within the square brackets. This square brackets means that I can now output a list. And I'm going to use this variable assignment, the equal sign. And I'm going to assign this list of strings to become a breakfast list. So again, I can name this however I want because I want myself to remember what this list actually contains. So I name it as breakfast list. I can also choose to add more items to this list. For example, you're telling me, oh, you actually had milk too. So I'm going to append milk to this list as well. So there's the append function over here. So if I print this, then you should see that this breakfast list should have 4 items: pancakes, eggs, waffles, and milk. So let's try to get the first breakfast element from this list. So we know that just by looking at this list, the first item is pancakes. But because everything in Python is 0 indexed, so the first element is at position 0. So if you want to get a first item, instead of saying the first, using a number 1, you are using number 0 because it's 0 indexed. And you are using square brackets again to index into the list. So let's run this cell. Yes, I'm getting pancakes. So that is correct. So what if I want the last item from this list? All I need to do is add a minus. And I want the last item because it's counting from the very end. So it's the last one. So it's -1. So it will get milk for me. I can also choose to print the second breakfast item and onward. And remember that everything in Python is 0 indexed. So if I want a second item, I will need 1. And if I want everything else to include everything else, then you will need the sign colon as well. So a second breakfast item and onward. And I'm gonna press Shift Enter again to get eggs, waffles, and milk. So you can see that pancake is excluded here because it is the first item. So now let's move on to conditionals. So sometimes depending on conditions, we want to execute certain lines of logic. And we can control this by using the if, else statements. So you can really think about conditionals as a type of branching statements. Like for example, if you have enough sleep, then you have enough energy for tomorrow. If not, you'll feel tired. So it's kind of like if something, if A, and then if B, and then else C, or something like that. So we think of them as branching statements. So say that we want to print plural forms of a food, and say that just a really simple example, say that we just want to add S to the end of string if it doesn't already have an S there to indicate that it's a plural form. Say that now I change my mind and say that my best food is actually chocolate. And I'm checking if this best food ends with S. Here you can see there's another built-in function that I'm using. And I'm just checking if chocolate has an S. If it does, then it's going to print it as is. If it doesn't, it's going to add S to it. So here I'm expecting the output to be chocolates. It's going to go through the second line of logic and going to add the S, concatenate S to this chocolate string. We can also make if-else statements a little bit more complicated by adding the elif. So here, for example, I say that the best food is ice cream, and the ice cream counts 1,000. And I'm saying that if best food is equal to ice cream, then I want 1,000 cones of ice cream. If the best food is blank, then I actually want you to tell me what your favorite food is. And else, really, is the ice cream better? So let's try this. So here, you can see that it's printing out 1,000 cones of ice cream. So say that if I can't make up my mind and I'm going to just leave it at blank, it's going to go to if statement first and check if this equals to ice cream, but it doesn't. So it's going to jump to the next line and check if the best food is equal to blank. And it says, yes, it is equal to blank. So let's print the favorite food. And if I say it's something else, then it would tell me, it would jump to the third line and says, oh, really? Isn't ice cream better? So we can check the equality of variables by using the double equal sign, or check if it's not equal, then you can use the exclamation point and equal sign. So you can see here that I secretly already used the equality principle or concept by checking, if best food is equal to ice cream by using a double equal sign. So I can check if ice cream is indeed the best food, but it's not because I just assigned it to pizza. So again, remember that with variable assignment, you use one equal sign, but when you want to check equality, you use two equal sign or exclamation point and equal sign. So now let's move on to for loops. For example, I really want to print out every breakfast item that we have had this morning. And for loops is a really simple way to do that, because I would not want to say print waffle, print eggs, print pancakes. That is really cumbersome. So a much easier way to do it is to use loops to repeat a block of code until a certain condition is satisfied. So for example, here, a certain sequence is satisfied. So if, for example, here is the breakfast list, and I want to print every single food in the breakfast list. So all I need to do is that for food in breakfast list, I'm going to print the food. So it's going to know that it's going to iterate over the sequence, and it's going to print out the first item first, and it's going to go to the second item, third item, and fourth item. So what if I want to count the number of letters in each word? Again, here you can see that I'm incorporating different parts of Python, like concepts, in this print statement. I'm using the variable, and I'm using the f strings over here. And I can use this built-in function called len, which really just means length. So you can count the number of letters in each word. So now it's going to look through this sequence of breakfast list, and you can see that it just executed everything. And all we need is just one line of code rather than 4 different lines to count, the letters for every single food item. So now let's move on to functions. So you may ask, why do we even need functions? Because honestly, this is already doing what we wanted. But functions is really helpful when we want something to be more repeatable. We want something to be more organized, and they all accomplish the same task. So if I want to generalize this printing to a function to generalize to other lists, then I can build a function by using the def keyword, def definition keyword or define keyword, and then followed by some function name that you want. And again, the more explicit, the more intuitive you name a function, the easier it is for you to interact with it later, because it just helps you to remember better. And then you're going to add a parameter name in it, wrap it in the brackets, parentheses over here, and followed by a colon. So you can see here that I define a really simple function that essentially is just the same thing over here. But you can see that this line and this line looks it is exactly the same. And I'm going to define print length, and now I can execute the function by passing the print length function a list. So if I were to comment this out, you will see that this actually does nothing, because all I'm doing right now in this cell is just defining a function. So I need to execute the function by calling this function and supply the function with a list or a parameter that I am interested in. So here the parameter of interest is breakfast list. I'm going to pass into it, and I'm going to execute this cell, shift enter again. So it is doing exactly what we are expecting it to do. We can also make functions a little bit more complicated by giving different arguments. So this is a single argument function. I can choose to have multiple arguments. Here, I'm just going to make it a little bit simpler and have only two arguments, but you can make it however many you want, but probably not too many because it's going to be hard to read for you as well. So say that now I want to count the favorite food that I have. I have ice cream count and I have chocolate count, and I want to add them together to count how much food I have in total. So you can see here that I'm just defining this as ice cream, defining this as chocolate. And again, how you want to name this parameters is really up to you. I can choose to name this X and Y. It doesn't really matter as long as you are supplying to it the right parameter, the right variable. But again, is the more explicit you name it, the easier for you to recall later. So you can see here that now it's doing the automatic sum for me because I'm specifying addition over here, return statement and plus. So you may also wonder, what if I know that one of the arguments is always going to be 500 or going to be some number? You can always set a default value so you don't have to keep supplying the same argument over and over again. So here, say that I know that chocolate is always going to be 500. I can supply this default value within the definition of function itself. And then I can just choose to pass in ice cream account because that is the only thing that changes. And I already know, the function already knows that the chocolate is 500. So it's smart enough to know that that is a default value and it should grab that. So I run this, then you should see that the output is exactly the same. So now say that we are just really crazy about data. We want to know how much chocolate we eat or how much chocolate we like. Here I can calculate percentage. Again, the same thing. Over here, you can see that instead of just having a 2-line function, I have a little bit more involved logic between this define and return statement. You can see that I'm calculating the percentage of chocolate that I have by dividing the sum of chocolates and ice cream and multiply by 100. And I'm going to use another built-in function here, round, to round out the numbers. So here, if I run this, and again, you can see that there's a print statement over here that uses the F formatting string and also the variable right here. You can see that it's telling me that I like chocolate 33% of the time. So if you do forget the parameters of a function, you can always call help. So just add help in front of the function that you want, and then shift enter again. And then it will tell you that this is ice cream and this is chocolate. So this is another reason why you want to name your function with reasonable names or intuitive names. So we have been defining quite a number of variables. So there is a chance that we'll forget what the variables are. But we don't have to worry because we can always check them. So just a quick recap, there is a % variable, best food, breakfast list variable that we have defined. So we can check the type %, and it's a float. Float really just means a number with decimal points. If you remember, the % up here is 33.33. This is why it is a float. And if I were to type best food, it is a string. I don't remember whether it's chocolate or pizza or ice cream anymore, but we know that it is a string, and str indicates string. And here, the breakfast list, here you can see that we probably know from the name itself that this is a list, which is why naming is really important. So yes, this is a list. So in a summary, so we have gone through the different types of variables. The int is numeric. It's a whole number without decimal points. For example, the 1 + 1 = 2, that would be an integer rather than a float. A float is a numeric variable, and it's a number that has decimal places like the %, 33.33. And a string is a type of sequence of characters. Like for example, I had chocolate, pizza, ice cream. They are all string types, but they can also be a sequence of any characters. Like for example, I can choose to enclose text and also numbers within double quotes or single quotes. And I can also choose to enclose these numbers within the quotes as well, and they can be string. So we can try that real quick just to check. For example, if I were to say number, and it is 1, 2, 3, and then I'm going to check the type of this number. It's going to say string. So if I were to take out the quotes, it's an integer. So if I were to add hello in there, it is also a string. So as long as something, a text that you have is wrapped within the quotes, double quotes or single quotes, is going to give you a string. And here we sort of hinted at it in the beginning. A Boolean type is either true or false. Like for example, I can define a Boolean variable by saying maybe you are cool equals to true. And then if I check, you are cool. This is a Boolean variable. A Boolean variable just means that it has two values. It can be true or false. So if I were to check equality of this Boolean variable by doing a double equal sign, by you are cool, so it's going to check is you are cool equals to true. So here, what should we be expecting? So we should be expecting this result to be true because indeed this variable is true. So let's check it is true. And then if we check that this is false, then you can know that because it's not equals to false, it's going to return us false. So here, yes, you have completed the first lesson on Python. You can see that all you need to know, the foundational concepts of Python is really just how to interact with different types of variables, how do you print them, how to figure out how to deal with lists, for loops, functions, conditional statements, and checking types. A good practice is always to name your variable correctly or intuitively so that it helps you better later when you look at your own code. But yes, that is the wrap up for this lesson. And you can go to this GitHub page. If you go back to the Tech Talk page, go into this folder again, Introduction to Python. You can see that there is one lab called FizzBuzz Lab. I'm gonna click into it to show you. So it's a really common interview question. So I can definitely recommend you trying it out. There is also a solution in there as well. So you can also take a look at it after you have taken a step. So now we have 20 more minutes, so we are open to take any questions. What
just
happens?
a quick yeah. Sorry, I was just going to say a reminder for everyone to post in the Q&A, but if you can grab them from chat, go for it.
Yeah, so I see a question here. What happens when you assign a variable with number and then reassign the same variable with a string? So let's try that. So here, if I were to assign a variable with number, so I assume this is what you mean. So say that it's 120 and assign the same variable with a string. Does anybody want to take a guess at what this will output? Can you answer in the chat function? Okay, I see string. 2 people have answered so far, strings. Yes, so it is correct. It's going to return a string. And why is that? It's because Python remembers that the latest variable assignment is this rather than this. So we can definitely use the export function in the Databricks notebook environment. So here I can see that I can export as IPython notebook, which means that you can use this later in Jupyter as well. You can export it as a source file, which means that this will be written out as a .py.python file that you can access it locally. And then you can also export it as an HTML link, or you can export it as DBC archive, which is the Databricks notebook environment. So if you export it to a DBC file, you do need to upload it back to the Databricks environment. This file doesn't get auto-saved to GitHub automatically. No, it doesn't. You can choose to integrate with GitHub, but right now I am not. So if I were to show you the home button right here, you can see that there is the files that you have right here that you have uploaded. And if you have multiple files and say that you want to go back to the most recent file that you have worked on, then you can go to this recent tab over here. You can see there's a Python fundamentals file right here. Then you can retrieve the latest file that you have worked on. Yeah, so there's a lot of documentation on how you can integrate with GitHub. We can definitely send that out as well. Is there a difference between Databricks and Azure Databricks? Let me defer that question to later because I'm going to focus on Python fundamentals for now. Can we call one notebook from another? You mean like sourcing a notebook from another? Cool. Yes, Brooke just answered.
Actually, Cheng Ying, I think there's a question or a few questions about why use Databricks for this when Jupyter exists.
Yeah, so on Databricks environment, you can see that you probably remember that in the first place, I showed that you can invite your peer to collaborate with you on the notebook. So that is a really handy feature. You can just invite users to the same workspace and you can collaborate on this very easily. And what is different about Databricks is also that you have the cluster management feature over here. So here, if you are using Databricks to run Python or any code that you have, then Databricks will manage the cluster, the environment for you. On Community Edition, you can only run one cluster at a time. Can you show one more time how you got stuff from GitHub into Databricks environment? Yes, I can. So let me go to this GitHub link again. And just because I can show, I'm gonna just show you the same link. Here you can see that I have the link over here in the top bar, and I can Command C, Control C to copy it. And I can go back to the page that you have on Databricks. And then you can hit the home button right here, and then the drop-down menu under your email. And then you can click import. Again, you can choose to import a file or a URL. Or a file just means that something in your download folder or whichever directory that you have locally, you can upload it. And then you can also choose to import via URL. And I can put in this URL, and then I can just click import. And then because they are both named the same, so this is going to have the suffix record1, parenthesis 1. Yes, so to create a cluster, you can see that here I have the cluster running. So I wouldn't be able to create a second cluster within the Community Edition. But all you need to do is to go to this, you see this sidebar that's everywhere, everywhere on in your notebook environment. And then you can click on this icon, and then it will take you to this page. And then there's a blue button right here that says Create Cluster. Hit Create Cluster, and then you can put in your name right here. So if you want to go back to the landing page of Databricks environment, you can also just hit the top left icon right here, Databricks, and then you can see that you can just add a notebook from the home page rather than going to the home icon and clicking to create a new notebook. So this is the two different ways to create a notebook, either from the home icon and then go to the drop-down menu underneath your email and then hit create notebook, or you can hit create notebook from the landing page, the home page of the Databricks environment.
And then Cheng Ying, looks like we have a question for you to create an example using methods rather than functions. If you could show that.
Where is that question?
It's in the Q&A. So for example, like string.upper, string.lower, and showing the difference between a function and a method.
Yeah, I'm gonna go back to this page. Yeah, so for example, here, if I were to, I can say that I want to remove an item from this breakfast list, I can choose to use oh, this is another feature that I want to show you first. So if you have already named a variable, say that I want break, but I can't remember how to spell the rest, or I'm lazy to type the rest, all you need to do is to press tab on your laptop, on your keyboard, and you can see that it's suggesting to you different the auto-completion for the variable or for different functions. So here, because I'm interested in breakfast list, so I am going to use breakfast list right here and just click into it and then press enter. And then you will see that the name of the variables now is being auto-completed. So if I were to remove the last item or remove an item from the breakfast list, I can say remove and then say that I want to remove eggs. So let's try that. So, okay, let's actually, before this, let me print out what breakfast list is. And I want you to take a guess what this would output. So here now it has pancakes, eggs, waffles, and milk. So how many items, what are the items will remain in this breakfast list after I remove eggs? So it should be everything except eggs. So you can see here that, okay, now we don't have eggs anymore. So this is another built-in function that you can also use. You can also, like if you remember, there was a, oh, sorry, that was with the string. Yep. So this is another built-in function, remove. What makes Python so great at data science and data engineering compared to other programming languages? Python is multi-purpose, so it's very versatile across different purposes. Like for example, you can choose to use Python in website development or data analysis or just building an application. So because it's more multi-purpose, then it makes it easier to collaborate across teams but still staying in the same language. Can you explain for loop break and continue feature? Sure, I can show how you can break a loop. So for example, right here, I want to say that I want to maybe say that if food equals to waffles, then I want to break this loop. And recall, actually, let me just make sure that what breakfast list contains at this point. So it has pancakes, waffles, and milk. So this means that if I use a break function right here, it will not print out milk anymore. So if I run this, shift enter, oopsie, sorry, I need to print food. Oh, so this is doing something different because it's checking whether or not this is waffles. And if it's waffles, then it's going to print it. Then if it's not, it's going to break it. So this is not very interesting. So I'm going to just say that print food, and then I'm going to say if food equals to waffles, and then I'm going to break it. Yeah, so here you can see that now it's checking. I'm printing the food right here to know that where the list has, where the sequence is at. So here we know that it has already gone through pancakes and it has already gone through waffles. And then if food is waffles, then it's going to break the sequence. And it's not going to print milk anymore. Yeah, so just so everybody saw how we can create a new cell, if I hover over this notebook environment right here, you can see that there's a plus sign in the center. You can insert a new cell like this. Or again, you can also go to the top right-hand corner of the cell to add cells or remove cells. So here I can say that I want to add a new cell above, add a cell below. I can also move cells. I can also show a title. Like say that if I want to show a title, I can just click into this and say, this is a breakfast list. And you can also choose to go to this run cell option. You can see that I want to run this cell or run all above and run all below. So this is really handy when you know that for sure everything else above is going to work and you don't want to go line by line to execute each cell, and you can choose to run all above and run all below. Any specific advantage of using Jupyter Notebook over PyCharm on or local machine? So it really just depends on your personal preference. There are people who really like notebook environment. There are also people who really don't like notebook environment. So we can see here that the advantage of having a notebook environment is that you can see the output within the execution. So I know for sure that now this is like 1 + 1 = 2, and it outputs the results for me, and I can see it right away. But if you use a local Python file, then it means that you will not be able to see the output immediately, like, together with the code. So it really just depends on your personal preference. I mean, of course, now there's also IDE that helps you to render the output within the same console, but not everybody uses PyCharm. So I would say that it boils down to personal preference. How many notebooks can one cluster service? That's a good question. So it depends on how memory intensive or how hardcore your task is on this notebook. Like, for example, like there's no fixed number the number of notebooks that you can run on a specific cluster. Of course, think of cluster as a resource, and if more people access the same resource or more notebooks access the same resource, that resource has to work harder to execute your cells. So yeah, if I have one really hard notebook that I know that on my local machine is already going to take like 10 hours, and then if on a small cluster, for example, maybe you just have like not basically just limited memory on the cluster. If you were to run 2 notebooks, one very memory intensive, one very computational intensive, and the other one is light, then it's definitely going to slow down the execution of the code on the Databricks environment on a cluster. So the answer is it depends. Do we have a cheat sheet of all the functions and syntaxes provided anywhere? There is Spark not Spark document, but there is Python. Just like if you go back to this website, actually, let me just show you this. So you can see that this is the Python tutorial. So this does show you a bunch of syntax that you can look at over here. And if you are interested in a break, continue, you can also look at this. There's also really just an overview of what you can do in Python. So I would recommend you going through this tutorial if you are interested in learning more about Python, but you can also go to the documentation as well. You can see here top bar over here, there's English and then 3.8.2 Python version and documentation. And you can take a look at the documentation. Or I mean, a really easy way to just check the syntax is really just to check, like, for example, list append, and then I can type Python 3 syntax or example. And then you can see that there is here you can see that the docspython.org, it already brings you back to what you can do within a list. So you can see there's like append, extend, insert, remove. So here's how you can get more information about what you can do with Python. Yeah, we have 5 more minutes left. Any more questions about Python fundamentals? And yes, in the future sessions, we are going to talk about pandas, but not Spark, because the purpose of this series of workshops is really try to get you to understand how you can use regular Python, without any, I guess, prereq of knowing what Spark is or interacting with Spark. So we're just going to be using Python and pandas for the upcoming workshops. So the number of collaborators on the Workspace is 3, including you. So here, for example, I can go to this Workspace and say that I want to invite more people. I can go to this admin console, because this is a community edition, so it allows 3 user accounts altogether. I can choose to add a user, and I say that, okay, I am just going to be cheating, and then just put a +1 over here. Now it says that I can add this person. The person should receive an email. Okay, add a second person. Another email is sent. But if I try to add a 3rd person, which means 4 in total, then this button is sort of, I guess, faded. then it will say that your plan doesn't allow more than 3 user accounts. To add more users, please upgrade your Databricks subscription. So for the community edition, you can only have up to 3 user accounts in one workspace. The link for the next classes, so let me put it this way. So all of the resources will be posted on the same GitHub page. So you can see here that there's a Tech Talk repo over here that is prefixed with date. So for next week's workshop, you can see 2020 April 15, and it will be introduction to pandas. And you can click into it. And then again, using the same process of importing the link from GitHub. So you can copy the link, the URL from here, from a notebook. And then you can import it back to your notebook environment. So it will be the same GitHub link that you'll be interacting with, but the link that you will be using for each notebook, that will be different because it's a different file. Or the training session link. I'm not sure about that. I will, Karen, do you know?
Yeah, so I just dropped it in the chat. So if you want to RSVP to the 2 upcoming workshops, I dropped the link in the chat, and then I'll also include that in the follow-up email.
Cool. Yeah, so here's the link that I just opened up from Karen's message in the chat. Yeah. So you can see here there's the first part, which is today's, and then there's the second part, which is next week. And then there's another tech talk about a different part of Databricks, which is Delta Lake. You can also attend that if you would like. But the third part of the series will be on April 22nd. You can also choose to click RSVP here, and then you will receive an email on how to join this webinar. Cool, we have 2 minutes left. I guess it's a good time to wrap this up, Karen.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, if there's no more questions. Yeah, thank you so much, Cheng Ying, for this. This was great. I think everybody really enjoyed the content. We had almost just over 300 folks attending, which is really awesome. So thank you so much, and thank you to all the team.